Bienvenidas.
Bienvenidas, comadres, compadres, and friends to our August 2021 teleconference. This is Karen Gonzalez, Book Club Coordinator for the Denver Las Comadres Book Club. We wish you and your familias health, safety, and love. We continue to pray for all affected by the pandemic and those affected by the recent hurricanes and fires. Our August 2021 teleconference celebrates two wonderful authors, Yamile, Saied, Méndez, and Caridad Piñeiro. We will learn a little bit more about them in a few. First, a bit of history about our book club. Our first book club gathering was in July 2004 in New York at Comadre Maria Ferrar's apartment. After a hiatus, it was restarted in March 2007. Comadre Johanna Castillo, at that time national organizer of the book club and former Comadres board member, said, "We are launching the book club to promote the work of Latino authors to every book lover, to bring our community to bookstores, and to support our writers. Now more than ever, we need to support our Latino authors. We encourage you to join our local book club in your city or time zone. We have clubs in 12 cities that are meeting virtually. There is sure to be one that can fit your schedule. If your city doesn't have one, why not help us start one? For more information about our book club, visit our website at latinolit.com. We started these teleconferences, Reading with Las Comadres, in October of 2006. We are in our 14th year of sharing works by Latino authors with all of you. We created the Reading with Las Comadres teleconferences and book club in an effort to entice everyone to read more Latino authors, to learn about Latino roots and different perspectives on Latino cultures and heritage. Our book club and teleconferences are open to all, not just Latinos. We are creating a space for everyone to explore the Latino writer's mind and soul as portrayed through the written word, so please invite others to join us. We are very grateful to the publishers, Algonquin Young Readers and Hallmark Publishing, for their support of this teleconference with free books. For more information about the authors and publishers, visit our website at latinolit.com. First, let's learn a little bit about our Book of the Month author. Yamile Saied Méndez is a football-obsessed Argentine-American Pura Belpré gold medal winning author. She lives in Utah with her Puerto Rican husband and their 5 kids, 2 adorable dogs, and 1 majestic cat. An inaugural Walter Dean Myers Grant recipient, she's also a graduate of Voices of Our Nations, VONA, and the Vermont College of Fine Arts, MFA, Writing for Children's and Young Adult program. She writes picture books, middle grade, young adult, and adult romance fiction. Yamile is a founding member of Las Musas, the first collective of women and non-binary Latinx, MG, and YA authors. Our interviewer is Tess Tobin. Tess Tobin has been a proud member of the Las Comadres and Friends National Latino Book Club since 2008. She loves to read, and as the new membership liaison coordinator, enjoys promoting the book club's mission to connect readers everywhere through Latinx culture and literature. Tess Tobin worked as a personnel and administrative services librarian at New York City College of Technology, the City University of New York, retiring in 2017. Tess has dedicated much of her professional career to Reforma, the National Association to promote library and information services to the Latinos and the Spanish-speaking, serving as its president from 2017 to 2018. Comadre Tess, take it away.
Bienvenida, Yamile. How are you tonight?
Thank you so much. I'm doing so well. How are you?
Very good. We're so happy to have you here with us tonight, and we all enjoyed your book so much. As you heard, I was past president of Reforma, and you were the first winner of the Pura Belpré Award for Young Adult Books. We were so delighted to expand the category this year to young adult titles. How did you feel about winning this award?
Oh my goodness, that was such a surreal moment because I have been an avid reader of past winners, and like Under the Mesquite Tree and Medina's book, and of course Lisa Escobar's book, and so many others through the years. And in 2020, we had so many amazing young adult books that came out, and of course, I had been hoping that Fudia would get some recognition But what my dreams were more along with the lines of, finding the readers that the book would resonate with. And when I got the call, I was just so honored and floored with gratitude that now my book will have the chance to get to all the readers that I had been intending to reach. So super happy. And I still pinch myself, I have the medal in my office, and when I come in the morning to work, I see the medal, and I still can't believe that it's real. I do rub it. It was amazing.
That's great. Very nice. That's great. I'm so happy for you. Congratulations. You said that this story is partially autobiographical. Can you tell us a bit about how you developed this story?
Yes, it's really what I actually say is that it's not autobiographical in the sense that it's not the story of my life, but it was definitely inspired by the people that I saw growing up, by the love of soccer or football, how we call it in Rosario. Rosario is a city obsessed with soccer. Leo Messi was born there. A lot of really famous soccer players were born there and exported to all the corners of the world, but all these soccer players have always been men. And knowing even as a young girl that I was only allowed to watch from the margins, it really made an impact in me. And also seeing the work of the early feminists that have been involved not only in sports like soccer, but in the fight to allow girls and women to have equal rights and more freedom, especially the freedom to live, to be safe in our city. That really left an impact. So it was, I set Furia in the same neighborhood where I grew up, Barrio 7 de Septiembre, a neighborhood of government housing, in which you found people from all walks of life, people that had all different backgrounds, but mostly were working class people that wanted a better future for their children. And I always, every time I go back to Argentina and go and visit my neighbors who are my family now, and because they're still very much in my heart. So I wanted to incorporate all the things that I loved about Rosario and the things that really made an impact in me as a young child. And that's why I say that there are so many things that are inspired in my life. But my story is not Camille's story. I always joke and say I did not end up with a soccer player. And I did not play soccer as a little girl because things were very different, even 20 years ago. And so those are the differences between my life and Camila's. But
are the girls nowadays allowed to play?
They are.
The girls nowadays allowed to play?
Yes. Actually, Argentina, soccer became a professional sport in Argentina in the year 2018, and now you see more calls for girls to join tryouts, and you see more exposure in the media about our women's national team, and every major soccer team now has a women's team. That was not the case when I was growing up. I would only see girls playing soccer, again, kind of like in contraband and making their own leagues. But now they're more recognized. Still, there's a long ways to go because I see culturally how sometimes young girls are still not encouraged by their families to play soccer. They're more led towards traditionally more feminine sports like field hockey or volleyball or gymnastics. I do see that little by little things are changing, but again, girls soccer is not as popular as it is in the United States even.
Okay. Well, at least it's making some advances. That's good.
It is.
Good.
Yes,
good.
It is.
You say in one of your interviews that you received advice as a young writer to always write from your heart and write what you know. So did this help you in writing Fudia?
Definitely, because I've always wanted to write a novel, a full-length novel, and up until then, I had written essays or more personal pieces that were nonfiction. And so although Fudia is not my first published novel, it was the first story that I attempted to write with the purpose to be published one day. And I didn't know much about writing. So those are the two pieces of advice that I kept hearing at different writing conferences that I attended. And so something that I knew a lot about was soccer, because I remember distinctly the moment as a young girl when I decided that I was going to learn all I could about the sport that my family and my city and my society as a whole was obsessed with. And I always love to be talking with different coaches here in the United States where I live, and they're always surprised at how much I know about soccer. But I did make it kind of my life passion to learn as much as I could. And what I had in my heart was also my hometown of Rosario. And so when I started writing Fudia, I hadn't been home for a long time because of different reasons. I was the mother of 4 young children at the moment, and traveling wasn't very accessible for my family. And so I like to say that I created my own alternate reality, my virtual reality in my manuscript. And when my kids would go down to sleep for their naps or at nighttime, I would immerse myself in the life of my character Camila and explore her experience of wanting to become a soccer player in Rosario, and that's how Fudia was born.
Yeah, well, you did a great job. Camilla's tendency is to never give up, and she's so inspiring as a character. So I think we all enjoyed reading the story. It's not really clear what is the time period in the novel. I couldn't quite tell if it's not present. What is the time period that they're going through at that time in the novel?
It's firmly set in 2016. So it was before Cristiano Ronaldo transferred to Juventus, before Argentina made soccer into professional sport. And I always wrote it intended to be a contemporary novel. But because of the financial situation in Argentina and the value of the dollar changing so drastically from day to day, my editor and I made the decision to set it firmly at a time when soccer was still not a professional sport. And so that I also wanted to make sure that the Utah Royals were starting to become a professional team, so that Camila had a clear path to be able to come to the United States. And so it's 2016, which is amazing. Which is amazing to see now that 5 years have gone by since the story was set on paper.
Camila lives a double life. She's a student and she keeps it from her parents that she's playing soccer. Do many girls live a double life in Argentina still? Knowing that things aren't allowed. Yeah.
I think they do, because Argentine people are notoriously known for our rebellious streak, right? We because of the things that our people have had to endure, the dictatorship and the financial instability, people still have that rebellious streak, wanting to find a better life. And sometimes when their dreams and the expectations of their families collide, I fear, that is the route that a lot of people take. Not only girls who want to become soccer players, but I'm thinking about women in general who have these dreams and who are told that they can become anything they want, but then in real life they find that is not the case. And so I do feel, and that's only not a monopoly of Argentine women. I think the reason Fudia has resonated so much with readers is because a lot of people identified with this need to live a double life, and to show like you are complying at least outwardly, but still have these dreams that you can't ignore in the background.
Right. So we have the other character, the other Diego El Titan. He's the
Yes.
somebody that Camilla's grown up with, and there you do have a lot of sexual tension, I believe, in the story with them. But it's a true coming of age story. So did you ever worry that it might be too much for young adult readers to have them so attracted and everything to each other, or did you feel that was just you had to tell that story?
And I feel that it was very realistic for Camila to have that kind of relationship. Like she mentions, a lot of women in her family for generations at her age were already, if not married, they already had a child, and so she wants to break with that cycle. But at the same time, in Camila's family, being in a relationship or finding love was used as a weapon as an obstacle for women to fulfill their dreams. So the fact that she found somebody who is an actual good person, because Diego's not a perfect character, but he does really love her, and his feelings are honest towards her, but they just come at the wrong time, right? And so, like she said to one of the younger characters in the book, sometimes love can also be a rebellion in itself. And
right.
It's just that she has to choose between two dreams, being loved for who she is and being supported, or also chasing this goal that she had. And so I do feel, I remember being that age and how intense feelings can be, and I'm the mom of 4 teenagers. And, sometimes as a grown up, as an adult, and you've been through the experience of first love, it's hard to tell kids that age, it's just the first love, because the feelings are intense, and it doesn't mean that because they're young, they're not real. So I really wanted to portray how, even to the strongest character, when she is faced with an obstacle that is still a good thing, like true love was a good thing for her, perhaps that was her greatest trial as she tried to reach her goal.
Good. You have the family dynamic in the book, and you have, the very abusive father. He seems like he's very unhappy. He, talks about how, his wife got pregnant and ruined his life and things like that. And then we have the part where, he does hit her, and he gets arrested right away. This was hard to read, I think, of him hitting her. Can you talk a little bit about this abuse of father and the effect he had on all both the son, the wife, and Camilla? Yes. How did his character develop?
Yes, I'm glad that you mentioned the effect that he had also on the son, because that is something that I always comment on in interviews, how misogyny and violence, they don't only affect girls and women, they also affect young boys who are trying to find good role models to become men in our society, and how this misogyny is passed on in the form of toxic masculinity. It was that scene at the end was very hard to write, and perhaps the father is my most two-dimensional character, and only because he's told from Camila's point of view, who sees no redeeming qualities in him. Also, he is the representation of this violence that she finds in society every day. And I also wanted to contrast how at the very beginning of the story, in the first chapter, her mother is so worried about Camila not being found at the wrong place and the wrong time with the wrong crowd, how she is so monitored everywhere she goes. And the danger for her wasn't really outside her home, it was inside. And I wanted to show how sadly that is the case for a lot of instances of family abuse or domestic violence, that a lot of times the perpetrators are people within the home, and how hard it is, how easy it is to stay in a situation when you hypothetically are going to be facing a stranger or somebody, outside in the street. But when it is somebody in the family, in the home, how hard it is to react the same way. And so that was Camila's. That was when she becomes not only the breaker of this cycle of abuse for herself, but also for her brother and her mother. And when they finally, all of them together, stand up to the father and stop being manipulated by him. So it was it's still very hard for me to read that chapter, and it was a very emotionally taxing process to write it. But I feel like it really had to be said. She had to stand up to that. She couldn't just run away without facing the greatest villain of all, who was in her same home.
Right. And it's nice how Camila's mother, at the end of the story, she has been able to open up her own shop. So here you also show another female character that's able to blossom once she's out from under her husband. So that was a nice part of the story too.
Yes, I have read. Oh, I'm sorry for cutting you, but I have read a quote that said, when you empower one woman, she will turn around and empower more. And usually we see, from the elder generations empowering the younger ones. I also wanted to show the power of one person empowering her own mother. And so I'm glad that you commented on that.
Right. Camila's alter ego is La Fudia. Can you talk a little bit on the name and the strength it gave her despite her conditions? And is the nickname supposed to reflect why she is able to struggle and succeed, I guess?
So a Fudia could also be a mythological character who she wanted, and so Camila adopting this alter ego and embodying her rage, her fury against society, and all the things that kept her trapped. She takes ownership of these feelings to, instead of destroy, to build up not only herself but her team and the young people that she mentors, and in a way also, like I said in the previous question, her family. And so sometimes we are told, sometimes we label emotions in a negative way, like anger or fury or ambition, but when you see them from another perspective, they can become a tool for liberation or for somebody to achieve their dreams. And that's why Furia is like the mask that she puts on to be able to vanquish all the obstacles that are put in her way, and also to inspire others to turn that fury into a positive outcome.
Right, which she definitely achieved. So that's wonderful. Mm-hmm. Of course, is it hard to write a new novel after having received so many accolades and awards for Fudia?
Yes and no. I'm going to say yes in the sense that now I have, I feel like I have this crowd watching over my shoulder as I try to work on my other projects. I will say sometimes no, because luckily I have been consumed with a number of projects and I don't really have time to think about that. But as I have been working on, I do have, several middle grade novels coming out next year, 2 anthologies, my first novel for adults. And in a way, perhaps because they're for different age groups, I didn't have that weight over my, my authorial shoulder. But as I have been working on my second young adult novel for my publisher, Algonquin, I will lie if I say that no, the thought hasn't crossed my mind. In fact, last year, right after right before I heard the news of Fudia, it had already been received super well. It had already been selected as part of the Reese Witherspoon Book Club. And so when it was time for my editor and I to have a little Zoom meeting to talk about the next project, I told her, oh, I'm a little gun shy because no matter what I write, it'll never, be Fudia. And again, when I received the news of the Pura del Pre, I repeated this comment, and my editors, Elise Howard and Sarah Alpert, said, you know what? Furia is its own thing. Now this is its own little project, and it's also a project very, very close to my heart that I hope that I can talk about soon. It's also set in Argentina, but at a very different time period. And I just get super excited, and I'm smiling from ear to ear as I talk because it is very different from Fudia, and it's also such a huge chunk of my heart. And I do want to free from expectations, though. I don't want to compare it. It's like comparing one child to the other. So I hope that I can do the story that is in my heart justice and let it bloom free of expectations. But yes, at the same time, I do think about people reading it one day and perhaps comparing them. And I do hope that now that I have more experience as a writer, that I feel I have grown in the craft of writing, and hope that will show in my next work.
Well, we definitely wish you all the best with all your future endeavors, and we are so happy to have you here with us tonight, Yamile, and best of luck with everything. So thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
So now let's learn a little bit about our additional conversations with author Caridad Piñeiro. Caridad is a transplanted Long Island girl who has fallen in love with the Jersey Shore. When Caridad isn't taking long strolls along the boardwalk, she's also a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author with over 1 million romance novels sold worldwide. Caridad is passionate about writing and helping others explore and develop their skills as writers. She is a founding member of the Liberty States Fiction Writers and has presented workshops at the RT Book Club Convention, Romance Writers of America National Conference, as well as various writing organizations throughout the country. Our interviewer, Julia Abrantes, is the submissions coordinator for the Las Comadres and Friends Book Club, board member of Empowering Latino Futures, and a stalwart of Las Comadres for over 12 years. Comadre Julia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Karen. Bienvenidas, Comadre Caridad.
Thank you so much, Julia, for having me visiting with you. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we always love reading a good Caridad Piñeiro book, and this was absolutely one to add to that collection.
Well, thank you so much. It really was a very fun book to write, and very exciting to see what's happening with it.
Excellent. Yeah, we're really excited, and we'll talk about that in a little second. But let's pretend for a second that our listeners are a little bit like Sarah in the book who don't know much about a quinceanera. Can you share a little bit about the history or the traditions and the significance, of course, of what a quinceanera is?
Of course. I wasn't lucky enough to be able to have a quinceañera for a number of reasons. First, because my parents were very much in that mold of wanting us to be American. And secondly, for financial reasons. So when my daughter was turning 15, it was very important to both of us that we follow that tradition. And it really is a lovely ceremony. It can also be religious. In fact, many quinceañeras involve going to church first for a big mass. But basically, the whole tradition is one of acknowledging that a female child is setting aside her childhood and the things of the past in order to become a woman. So there's some wonderful things that happen during the tradition. For example, after when the young lady walks in with her court, she's generally wearing shoes that represent her childhood. And in this case, in the book, they're wearing their soccer cleats. and those get exchanged for heels. There's a dance with the father to acknowledge, that she's becoming a woman, gifts from the important women in her life to kind of bring her forward into, womanhood and away from, the past as a child. I think also one of the fun ones is that generally the girls will walk in with a toy, a favorite toy or something, and they hand that off to another child in order to signify that they're putting away the past as children and are now starting a new phase of their lives. So it's an absolutely wonderful tradition that's followed in many areas, and I thought it was important to share it, especially when we had my daughters and we had so many people who had never experienced it, and they were just like, wow, this is so beautiful. It's such an interesting tradition. So I wanted to be able to share that with people reading the book and people who would be part of the Hallmark audience.
Yeah, it was really, really beautiful. And thank you for sharing that with our listeners who are here today. Although many do know about it, I'm sure there are other readers who have followed you because of your other books that you've written and who are learning about the traditions in a quinceañera, which was really beautiful. Well, one of the things you talk about is where I'm going to start with the sub story and then get to the big part. One of the things you talk about with a quinceañera is going from a child to a young adult, right? And Angelica and Samantha were rivals, in school. And because of the situations that happen and that occur, I don't want to give too much away. They turn into friends and working with each other. It's like they grew up even, before this happened. And it's refreshing to see today when all you see outside and in social media is cancel culture. Do you want to talk a little bit about how important it was to put something like that in this book?
It was very important for me on various levels. Again, the quinceañera tradition, the party and the symbolism of it really could be lost if there wasn't growth with the girls throughout the story. And I think you definitely see that from when the story first begins to, what we'll call the black moment, that little by little they're growing and they're losing what would have been, the childish behavior of the rivalry and other things in order to help each other in school and through what ultimately happens towards the end of the book. So for them, really, the quinceañera caps off what happened, but by then they have become adults because they're willing to make certain sacrifices and they've grown as the story develops. And I thought it was important because we do have all this cancel culture where there's a lot of negativity and people attacking each other, and I really wanted to show how people overcome that and learn to respect each other and learn to get along. And it was the same thing with Sarah and Tony, and in some respects, we have Sarah, who is not Cuban, who's now been asked to make, this very traditional Cuban meal. And, at one point, in a similar way, Tony says to her, well, do you think you can out-Cuban a Cuban? And what right have you to make Cuban food? And I thought it was important to talk about that and about also the cultural appropriation, because for me it's a question of, as you see Sarah and her sister-in-law, who is Cuban, learning, where you see her learning, you see the respectful way that she treats the very precious recipes that are being passed down to her by her sister-in-law. And I think that was very important to me to say that when it comes to sharing culture, the most important thing is that we respect each other and that we understand the other person's culture and that it's okay to share it in that way that happens in the book, because Sarah is very much respectful of it. She's very much, she's very emotional when she sees the love and that Dolores, who is her sister-in-law, has for these recipes and the memories that they generate. For me, I remember one chef saying that you never really lose your culture until you lose your food. And I think that's very true. A lot of people, one of the things that lets them hold on to their culture is the sharing of food, because as you see in the story, she's not just sharing the recipe, she's sharing the memories of how she and her grandmother and her, and her mother made these foods. And so as women, that process is one of us keeping our histories and us and our traditions and our cultures, and then sharing it with others so that, we can be more welcoming and understanding of each other.
Exactly. I mean, I know, my generation, when I was growing up, abuela was always in the house, and mommy was in the house, cooking the meals, and you came home from school and there was somebody there and who you could watch and learn from. But then when you think about today, where everything is instant, microwave this and just heat up this and that, sometimes it gets lost. So it was heartening. It it warmed my heart to see that kind of tradition, because with every family, no matter what your culture, there is that meal that is reminiscent of your grandmother or your aunt or your dad. There's something, and there's that tradition, and the cooking means so much. Um, it means so much to me, and also with families all around. So let's talk a little bit about the characters now. So we have
Okay.
Tony and we have Sarah. I loved Sarah's strength and resilience, and how she, she shared a little bit about the struggles that women face in the restaurant industry. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can. It was, even though it's a romance and it's a feel-good romance, I think people who have read my other work always see that I do empowered females, but that I always manage to try to get in there something that's a little bit weightier. And this one I managed to get in a bunch of things, because we did talk about the cancel culture and cultural appropriation.
Right.
But the other thing I really wanted to get across was just how difficult it is if you're a female chef, even today, to get the kind of recognition that male chefs get. And that has a whole kind of domino effect, because if you're not getting the recognition, it's that much harder to get the financing that you need in order to have a larger restaurant or a fancier restaurant. And that's why it's often common that a lot of female chefs have mom and pop shops and smaller places until they can somehow generate enough fandom or enough fame to kind of break out of that mold. But if you look, just look at your chef shows on TV and everything else, you'll see that they're really dominated by men. And I wanted to get that point across, because Sarah does mention it as she's talking to Tony. And despite that hardship, she and her partner have made a go of it and have opened a place and are doing well, but it's much harder for them. And I think it's not just in the chef business; it happens in a lot of careers still. Unfortunately, I know from my own former career as an attorney, and in many instances it was a big boys' club.
Right.
But I always want my women to be able to overcome that and achieve their dream and what they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was very, empowering to see, always when a woman can get above everything that's holding her down, it's always a good thing to see. And so let's talk a little bit about Tony and Sarah. So they knew each other as young kids. She was the little sister of his friend. And of course, time has passed, and when you see each other, down the line. And now this event that brings them together. You want to talk a little bit about how, the little love story, or not little love story, the love story.
Love story. Well, I did, for me, because there were so many other things that I wanted to get in there, like the recipes, the traditions, the tradition of the food, but also the tradition of the quinceanera, and also just giving you really, I hope, when people read it, they get a real sense for Little Havana and South Beach and Lincoln Road and that whole area. And so I did have to kind of start the romance with them kind of already knowing each other, because I didn't have the leisure of building that up if I was going to get everything else into the story. And also, I think, you know, in the romance world, there are certain tropes that people like, and, you know, the best friend's little baby sister is certainly one of them, because you like seeing, you know, and it usually works that way, that it's the guy seeing the girl who all of a sudden has blossomed into something that he never expected.
Right.
And in Sarah's case, it's not just physical beauty that attracts him. More importantly, it's this very strong, incredibly talented chef.
Right.
That he all of a sudden, it's like, oh my God, this is some woman. She's, you know, successful, she's intelligent, she's talented, and yeah, she may be pretty, but it's all the other things that are what really draw Tony into wanting to have that relationship with her. And for her, you know, it is that crush, of course, disappearing, but I think it is her seeing him now as a man, and likewise as somebody who's talented, has succeeded at what he's done. And I think all of those things lead to them being attracted to one another before, of course, this horrible, unexpected thing that has them basically fighting to try and achieve something that will help both of their careers.
Correct. I loved how also the young girls, Angelica and Samantha, actually kind of played a part in bringing them together.
I did too, and I thought that was part of, again, you know, seeing them go from rivals to adults who were willing to sacrifice and compromise in order to make someone else happy.
Yeah.
And so by the time they get to the quinceanera, you know, that tradition just kind of confirms that these are young ladies now. They're young women who understand right and wrong and what it is to do the right thing for someone.
Yeah. It's really beautiful. Really, really beautiful. So as many of our listeners and readers know, this has been made into a movie that we are going to get to see in just a month and a couple of days. Do you want to tell us about it?
It is. It's very, very exciting. It's only one of 3 Hallmark Publishing books that was selected to be turned into a movie.
Yeah.
So it's exciting for that reason. But more importantly, it's exciting because for the first time, not only are there Latino characters, and there have been some in other movies, but this movie really highlights Latino culture.
Yeah.
For Hallmark. And that is a huge step. And I give them props because they are so committed to embracing diversity and reflecting today's America in their movies in various ways. And this is certainly one of them, by showcasing something that does feature in this particular thing, obviously Cuban culture, the culture of Miami. And so it's just so exciting to see that. And I actually got a chance to go down to Tampa to watch some of the filming, which was really, really exciting. The film features William Levy, who I'm sure a lot of people are very familiar with, and Taylor Cole, who is a lovely young lady. I got to meet her. And she is one of the very popular Hallmark movie stars. And the film will premiere October 9th at 9 p.m. And I hope people will tune and see it. There have been some changes made, but I still think that they've captured the heart of the story and hopefully the culture and their traditions. And I'm so excited to see what they do with it.
Oh, I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. I mean, and I applaud Hallmark as well, you know, for bringing this story, which, as you mentioned, is not just a story that takes place in South Beach, but it's also a story that talks a lot about something that's so important to Latinos and our culture. So that is it's a really beautiful thing. I want to say I have my DVR set already, but it doesn't go that far out. But I do have a reminder already set to make sure that I get it, and I'm watching it, as soon as it airs, which is going to be on a Saturday night. So that'll be perfect. I have to say that when I was reading this book, I had to make sure that I ate before I was reading because the recipes and the food was so amazing. I love cooking. I love recipes. Thank you for including recipe in there. But where did you get the recipes, or how did you decide about which meals to include in the book, or which
Yeah.
recipes? Yeah.
And that was a tough one. I love to cook. I think if I wasn't a writer, I would love to be a chef. So I've done a number of books that have had chefs. And in this one, I wanted to pick foods that were traditional.
Mhm.
And I think people would see as traditional, especially when it comes to the recipes that Sarah's sister-in-law is giving to her, because she is supposed to be doing a traditional Cuban meal for this event. On the other hand, Tony's claim to fame is that he's taken not only Cuban food but various kinds of Latin food and really turned them on their head by fusing them with other cultures. For example, and I do have recipes on my website. If you go to the website caridad.com, there's an area called Cook's Treat under tips and fun, and I have a number of recipes there. And so, for example, there's a mention of this porchetta that Tony makes, and I had been watching a show where they were making this Italian-style porchetta, and they were explaining how to do it and everything. And I said, "Oh, what fun! Why don't I give that a Latin twist and use, all the citrus and garlic and cumin and all the other things that I would do for my traditional, noche buena lechon? Why don't I do that, but do it for a porchetta?" And so what I did with Tony was take a lot of what I consider traditional recipes and the ones that Sarah wasn't doing, and think about how to turn them on their head by fusing them with other cultures. And I think part of the reason for that is my family is that mix. My husband's Italian, I'm Cuban, and so when it comes to some of the holidays, our foods are really either a fusion or, a lot of each of the cultures coming together to feed our families. And I think a lot of people are like that in America today, where, they're cross-cultural and multicultural in their homes. And so why not show this by having Tony have a fusion of all kinds of different things in his recipes?
I gotta tell you, that porchetta is, I printed out that recipe because I did get it from your website. Actually, almost all of the recipes that you have on your website, I printed out. But that is one that's on my list. That's on my to-do list. I need like a weekend. I need to not be disturbed. I just want to take and focus and make it as pretty as it is in the picture.
I hope so. And like I said, and that one, is an interesting one because it really is a blend of Italian and Cuban, just like my family. Porchetta is a very common street food that you would find in Italy.
Yeah, it's definitely one. And once again, can you share the website where our readers can get all your other recipes?
Sure. It's www.caridad.com. And there's a section Tips and Fun. But also, if you want to look for recipes that are specific to South Beach Love, you can go to the page for South Beach Love once you're at caridad.com. And you'll see the various recipes on that page. And I also have a free recipe book, Recipes for the Romantic Soul, where I've put a number of the recipes plus some free reads from a number of my other books.
Yeah, we're lucky because as someone who's read, I think probably all of your books, there's always a recipe or some meal that's significant, and yeah, definitely something to share. And one more thing, readers and followers of yours want to know when and if they can expect one of your steamier novels.
Oh my gosh, that's a good question because I have found that lately, a lot of my novels, for one reason or the other, have not had the steam that they had in the past.
Okay.
So it's probably going to be something later next year. I'm working on some things. I have a number of books out next year. I am writing romantic suspense again, so I have at least 3 or 4 releases for Harlequin Intrigue coming up. Starting actually with a September 28th release, Trapping a Terrorist, which features a Cuban and American FBI agent. I have a really interesting book, which really is a book of my heart, coming out in February of 2022. It's called The Family She Never Met. Where we're back in Miami and South Beach and everything, but the reason it's really a book of my heart is that for many years I tried to write my family's story, in particular my mother's story, who was a very strong and unique woman. And with our escape from Cuba, it was really, quite a story in and of its own. But I always struggled with it because it was just too emotional to get into what had happened and how we got here and everything else. And when I was asked to write a different book by Source Books, who's the publisher, I started writing. The next thing I knew, I was created these fictional characters, but they were telling my family's story. They were telling about what happened to us in Cuba and how we came here and how I felt as a child and the things that happened. And the next thing I knew, I had this book, The Family She Never Met, that includes a lot of my family's real life stories and, of course, food. I don't want to disappoint you, Julia, but it has food, lots of it.
Wow.
But,
okay.
yeah, and there is some theme in there because even though it is the story of 3 women trying to end a familial estrangement, there is a very strong romance story there. And so you will see some theme in that book. But it's just a different book for me, and I'm very happy that I got to write it, and it was unexpected because I was really starting one story, and then all of a sudden I realized that I could finally do that history that I hadn't been able to do before.
Wow. Well, I definitely look forward to reading that and your other works. And we thank you, Caridad, for sharing this story with us, or the traditions, the food, of course. And we look forward to watching the movie in the next month or so.
I do too. Yeah, it'll be October 9th at 9 p.m. on the Hallmark Channel. And I'm really looking forward again to seeing how they do it. And I've heard that they're very happy with how it's turned out, and that the 2 leads had a lot of chemistry on the set, and I was happy to hear that.
Excellent. That's really wonderful. Mil gracias otra vez, Caridad.
Mi placer, Julia.
Gracias. Well, comadres Yamile, Caridad, Tess, we are so grateful for the insightful interviews and for spending time with us this evening.